Hey, what's up? This is Scott with Level Up Tutorials, and in this video we're going to install React Router into our project and get some basic routing done. Now, React Router is a router that's highly used outside of the Meteor community with the React community, and for good reasons. You'll see just how easy it is to make sense of the concepts in React Router as we get up and running. So let's get started with that right now. Okay, so we have our app up and running. Now we're ready to start diving into some intermediate techniques, including something that might not necessarily be intermediate, but entirely necessary for many apps, which is going to be routing. So in this series, we're going to be using React Router. Now, React Router is great because it's not tied to Meteor, right? If for some reason Meteor were to disappear tomorrow, the skills that you would learn from using React Router will definitely transfer over to other frameworks in terms of backend or full stack frameworks. And React Router is very popular outside of the Meteor scene as well. So it's always nice to learn techniques and tools that are popular elsewhere so that you're not only just advancing your Meteor skills, but you're advancing your skills universally. Okay, so let's go ahead, and the first thing we want to do is Npm Install. And this right here assumes that you have Npm installed. If you do not, you can always type Meteor Npm install, and that will just use Meteor's Npm. Now we're going to say Npm install -- save, and then we're going to save a React router. Okay, Npm install -- save React router, enter. This is going to bring React Router into our project. Great. Okay, now it's actually time to open the project in our text editor. So I have my project here. I'm going to just drop it into Atom, which is the text editor I'm using for this series. I'm using the material theme for this. And as we can see, if we head to our package.json, we do in fact have React Router right here. Now from here, let's go ahead and we're going to essentially head to our client folder, and you'll see in our main.js, the first thing we did was we hit our Meteor startup and we rendered app to the render target. This is going to be changing here now that we have access to a router. So let's go ahead and come into our imports, and we're going to head into our client imports, and I'm just going to make a new file. We can add a new file, which will just be routes.js. Okay, now inside of here, we're going to import React from React lowercase. So we have React, and we're also going to be importing React Router. To do that, we want to say import. Now inside of brackets here, I'm going to space these out on their own line so we can read this a little bit better. We want router, we want route, we want index route. You can just copy and paste these all directly from React Router's GitHub or documentation if you don't want to accidentally type these incorrectly. However, it's nice to know exactly what you're importing. And then this last one does not start capitalized in its browser history, like that. And we're going to be importing those from React-Router, like you may have suspected. Okay, so at this point, we're not using this routes file, so we shouldn't be seeing any sort of errors or anything like that. Everything should be a-okay here. So now what we're going to do is basically we want to write the section of the code that says basically render this to our document just like we did in our main.js. So let's copy this right here. Let's copy this Meteor startup stuff. Let's paste it in. So we're going to leave the Meteor startup on Meteor startup, and we're going to leave render. We want to render something to the render target. Okay, so this part right here is going to stay essentially the same, with the main difference coming in at app. Now we're no longer going to be rendering app, but we're going to be rendering essentially the router. So we can come in here, delete app, and we're going to have a new element, which is going to be router. And we can give this a property of history, and history is going to be equal to, within brackets, browser history. I'm just going to copy and paste it from up here. Basically, this is going to allow us to use the history API so that we can, get forward, backwards, whatever within React router. And let's go ahead and close this element off. And Atom nicely does that for me like that. Okay, so this is looking pretty decent. We've now initialized our router. Things should be going all right. Now we want to add a route. Now what we want to add is a route element. So we can see we have a route and we want to give it a path. The path is going to be equal to a /. So this is basically just going to be our home route. And what we can do is we can give this a component. And that component is, maybe you could have guessed this or maybe you couldn't. It's going to be app. Let's close this off like this. So what's going on here is this long bit right here is going to be replacing this little bit. So these 8 lines are getting replaced by these 3 lines here, but we're actually getting something a little bit more powerful out of it. And in fact, we're going to be able to start assigning routes instead of saying, hey, just render this one particular component to the render target. Hey, render whatever particular component based off of whatever path we're at. Okay, so we have this router set up, but we're not using it. And we want to get using it, so let's head to our main.js. And before we imported app.js from imports.client, what we want to do is we want to import the routes file itself. We're not going to be importing any particular component or anything that we're exporting. We're just going to be importing the routes file. So we can delete this and type import, and then we can just give this a path, which is going to be the path to our routes file. So we can say we want to go ... to go back one directory, then we want to grab from imports, client, routes. And you can get rid of that JS there. We just want to import this file. Now, if we save this, we're going to get an error because it's going to hit this and it's going to say app is undefined, because you'll notice we're not bringing in app. Anything that we're using here, like browser history or router or route even, we are bringing in and using. But app, of course, is the exception to that here because we haven't imported it yet. Just to make sure everything is okay, let me refresh this page and see what kind of errors we are getting before we get too ahead of ourselves. As you can see, render is not defined in routes.js line 10. So in line 10, we're saying render. But this render is not a part of anything. It's not a method of something we're importing. So in addition to app, we also didn't bring in render. Well, where does render come from? Well, in main.js that we had here, we actually imported render from React DOM. So let's grab that. Let's come back here and import render from React DOM. Once again, we need to import app. So let's import app from, not form, but from. And this is in the same directory, so we can do /app. Just like that. Okay, and now if we head back to our file, boom, just like that, we have it up and running. Now this is great because even though we don't have any routes going on, we know that our router is working. There's no other way for our application to see the app component other than hitting this router. So basically on startup, it's checking out, it's coming to render, and this is functioning a lot like a normal React component where we're just rendering something, right? So we basically have these objects which wraps our entire router in history, and then we define a single route with the path of / and the component as app. If we were to come to our application and pass this something like, let's see, /hi, we're going to get a hi did not match any routes. However, if we come in here, let's go ahead and add a new path. I just copied this line. I'm going to give this a path of hi. And I'm going to say, if you're on the path of hi, you can also render component app. Now this is entirely stupid. We'll be deleting this in a second, but as you can see, our application is back before we can even tab back. Super cool. We now have React Router up and running. Now, it's not really serving us a huge benefit right now because we have one page. So in the next video, we're going to be talking about layouts. We're going to build a layout with a stateless functional component, which is something that we didn't go over in the last series, but it's a really cool shorthand for writing React components that will give you some performance benefits when you don't need a state for that particular component. Now, what's perfect for that is things like layouts. So let's go ahead and remove this stuff right there. We now have our one route. We are ready to go for the next video where we take on layouts with React Router. As always, this is Scott with Level Up Tutorials. If you have any questions or comments, leave a comment in the video or hit me up at Twitter or Facebook at Level Up Tutorials. If you want to see the rest of this series, head over to store.leveluptutorials.com and purchase this entire series for download, or you can become a Level Up Pro. Subscribe and get access to this series along with the Meteor Basics, a 1.4 series, and content that's only available on Level Up Pro. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.